Huomenta vaan taas kaikille osallistujille ja mukava taas, että pääsette näin keskellä viikkoa tähän meidän tämän kevään viimeiseen varsinaiseen työpajaan, missä tehdään hands-on harjoituksia. Ja tänään tosiaan käydään läpi noin meidän kehittäjän työkalut ja tänään niin sanotusti koodataan, eli aika paljon tullaan nyt sitten tänään olemaan siellä terminaalissa ja käytetään sitä meidän kehitysympäristöä ja rakennellaan vähän kontteja ja ajetaan automaattitestejä ja sitten lopulta niin viedään niitä tuommoisen automaattisen CICD-putken kautta sitten tuonne meidän konttipalveluun. Ja tänään on tosiaan oikeastaan haastavin näistä työpajoista, mitä on ollut teknisessä mielessä, että tänään tosiaan mennään aika syvälle. Mutta tosiaan meillä on tänään muutama uusi arkkitehti. Meillä on täällä Alison Asma mukana tukemassa ja Adamu sitten on ollut aikaisemminkin näissä mukana ja Adamu aluksi käydään läpi noita päivän työkaluja ja miten me nähdään tuo kehittäjän työkalut ja miten kehittäjän työkaluja voidaan hyödyntää meidän alustalla. Ja tosiaan sen jälkeen, kun on katsottu tuo esitys, pidetään taas pieni tauko ja sen jälkeen sitten varataan taas suurin osa ajasta tänään niin sen labran tekemiseen. Tänään on aika paljon siinä harjoituksia, ne on erittäin teknisiä, mutta niissä on tänään myöskin sitten semmoinen vaihtoehto, että kun siinä on useampi kohta, niin kenelle saattaa olla tutumpi tämä homma, varsinkin siellä, missä tehdään omaan tahtiin tai sitten tässä Advanced-huoneessa, niin pystyy kelaamaan niitä kohtia eteenpäin, eli ei tarvitse tehdä. Lähdetään tosiaan ihan tänään tuolta lähdekoodin hallinnasta ja ne konttien rakentamisesta liikkeellä, mutta ne on jaettu loogisiin kokonaisuuksiin ne labrat, niin pystytte sitten, jos on jo tuttuu, niin hyppäämään sitten suoraan vaikka sinne CICD-puoleen. Ja sitten taas tuossa vähän ennen kahta lopetellaan. Ja tämä on viimeinen työpaja, niin tosiaan taas sen meidän kyselyn saatte täytettyä, niin säädetään sitten näitä työpajoja sen mukaan. Ja muutaman viikon päästä sitten katsotaan vähän sitä sertifikointikokeeseen valmistautumista ja sen jälkeen sitten toivottavasti mahdollisimman moni menee tekemään sen kokeen ja mahdollisimman moni myös sen sitten saa suoritettua, jos se ekalla kerralla, niin sitten tokalla. Ja meillä on myös, tuossa oli vähän mimmies väkispuhetta, me ollaan nyt myös saatu krediittejä, eli on ollut paljon kyselyitä tuolla palautteessa, että voisiko näitä tehdä omalla ajalla sille meidän tileillä, niin valitettavasti meidän tilejä ei voida, me voidaan pitää näitä sinne 10 asti auki, mutta me ei pystytä niitä sen pidempään antamaan, koska ne on käytetty vaan näihin, tai tarkoitettu vain näihin tapahtumien yhteyteen, mutta me voidaan tosiaan antaa teille kredittejä, eli siinä on ne voucheri, minkä te voitte sitten teidän omalle henkilökohtaiselle AWS-tilille laittaa, ja sitten sinne tulee tietty määrä, ihan vaikka $50 tulee kreditteinä, ja sitten se $50, ennen kuin teidän kortilta aletaan mitään velottaa, niin se käytetään. Ja tarkoitus oli, että järjestetään nyt ihan lähiaikoina teille tästä erillinen webinaari, missä käydään läpi, miten ne kreditit otetaan käyttöön, miten AWS-tili otetaan käyttöön ja varsinkin sitten, että miten sinne sitten voidaan konfiguroida sellaiset hälytykset, että kun esimerkiksi $30 on käytetty, niin sitten teille tulee automaattisesti vaikka sähköpostiviesti, että tiedätte sitten, että teillä alkaa lähestyä se kredittimäärä. Niin se mahdollistaa sitten sen, että te voitte tehdä näitä harjoituksia omilla tileillä silloin, kun se teille parhaiten sopii. Hyvä. Ja jos on jotain kysymyksiä tässä esityksen aikana, muistakaa aina, voitte chatissa laittaa, koitetaan vastailla. Ja sitten taas niissä labroissa, niin koitetaan pitää interaktiivisena, niin saatte mahdollisimman paljon näistä irti. Hyvä, ja tänään tosiaan Adamu pitää meille tämän esityksen. So Adam will be presenting in English, so I leave the stage to you, Adamu.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. So good morning, everyone. Today, what I'm trying to do is to try to walk you through CI/CD on AWS, kind of introduce you to our developer tools or developer ecosystem tools. Now, this is very kind of broad area, very expansive area. I have about 58 plus slides. I'm not going to go through them all, but what I will attempt to do today is just familiarize you with the environment so that you can easily navigate and then easily find what you are looking for and understand the sort of concept and then the different kind of CI/CD components that is involved and what AWS services and capability are used to offer those services. So this is the kind of the attempt for very introductory section now, just to get you familiarized with the environment and kind of be able to navigate on your own, understand what you are doing, and understand the services that you'll be using to, meet any aspect of the CI/CD kind of pipeline. By the way, my name is, as Yura said, Adamu Aruna, and I'm a colleague of Yura, and also in AWS Finland here. Yeah, so let's start. Let's start. Yeah, so first, because there is a lot of terminologies, a lot of nomenclature in this area. So first, I would like to go through the foundations, get the terminology right so that we are all on the same page. Like talk conceptually on the release process, and then the next talk about what services and capability AWS has in each phase or each kind of component of this release process. And then we kind of go into a little bit of details in terms of taking each component one at a time and the service AWS is offering for that aspect or stage of the CI/CD kind of pipeline. We look at infrastructure as a code. How kind of you build your resources or you deploy your resources using software or YAML or JSON template in a sense. And then what I would like to do next is to kind of briefly show you what is new or what is next. Next means like evolution of those basic kind of service like infrastructure as a code. What is next in terms of what AWS has built on top of that? So abstracting the kind of lower layer services and then making life easier either for the developers or for those who want to build kind of serverless applications. So that means still kind of making it possible or easier for people who are not expert in the AWS infrastructure to still build application over AWS with their existing kind of language or environment they are familiar with. So we talk about that, and then I'll give you some links or some site that you can go and then kind of with your own personal journey, get more information, and then kind of build your software kind of competencies or journey with AWS with those kind of resources. And by the way, anything I show there will be a lot of links and resources at the end, so you can go further and kind of look at that. All right. So just before we go to the CI/CD, like I said, we look at the foundation, why organizations are set up for that, and why kind of we are proposing or people or organizations are moving to this kind of CI/CD kind of a continuous integration, continuous delivering kind of development cycle, you know. And so before then, we all know that before people used to build a monolithic services or monolithic application, right? So you have a bunch of developers all kind of contributing to the same code base. And what usually happens in this case is that it's a large code base and a huge development. It takes forever or a long time for the application to be completed. And when it's done and it's given to the QA department. And then the QA department will have to struggle with all their kind of doing their magic in terms of testing, integration testing, smoke testing, performance testing. And they do all these things in their department. And when something happens or a failure or some bug, it takes a while before they throw it back to the developers to fix it. And then this could take hours or days even for a developer to see any bug or this and that has happened in their code development. And after, if it succeed, then they have to kind of ship it back to the operation side to deploy and continue to maintain the application in the production environment. And when something happens, it takes a while before even the developers get to know. So this, we are talking about release cycles of yearly or annually or quarterly. So it takes a while, and when something happens, it's really big. So like you deploy an application and you are counting or praying that something doesn't happen, because when it happens, it's really big. And this doesn't have to be the case. So this has been kind of a slow kind of progress, and has because of major issues and major outages that we've heard from a lot of companies. And now almost half of the companies are moving to what we call microservice development lifecycle. So now this is a change of mindset. Instead of having that monolithic application, everybody contributes to this phase. The application has been split to kind of microservices, like individual independent services that all together put together to make up the application. So now this, so each team are working on their services and they are independent from each, and they don't rely on any other service working, because they just kind of communicate via API. So this kind of creates the independence for each team, flexibility, autonomy, and also they can move fast and deploy independently. Now, this has a lot of advantages, because now, instead of kind of looking at the application as a monolith, we are looking at value stream. What kind of value we add to the application, how often do we kind of release this value to the customers? So, and this also requires a little bit of mindset change or culture change. Instead of waiting to develop everything, you are rather kind of release fast, release quickly, and release often, so that any kind of any minor defect or distance, you can easily kind of catch it, or you can easily kind of quickly recover or roll back on it. So, and this kind of setup, to be able to enable this kind of setup also underneath it requires a lot of automation. So a lot of automation and a lot of kind of consistent flow that you need to set up in your environment to be able to meet this kind of release model. So the one of the key reasons we kind of see that organizations are moving to this is just to accelerate delivery of new high quality service. So now we are not talking about whole product, we are talking about services that enhance value. So we are talking about value stream to the customer. So in each application, you might have different services that may kind of have a different life cycle that bring, each time it's released, it brings value to the customer. So, and also one of the reasons is to reduce the impact of changes. So once you, a change is introduced and there is some impact, error or distance, it kind of focus on that specific change. And you have the kind of tools and the capability to be able to roll back or to recover from these changes that doesn't affect the whole kind of application that is running. And also what it gives you, that you have really insight across all your resources and applications, because these are individual services and they have individual life cycles and they have kind of individual releases. And then you have a good insight on each resources and how they come together to form your applications. And last but not the least, you protect your customers and your business as well, because you can always release in the production without kind of losing sleep or that fear that if something happens, everything, there is a whole outage. You can always be sure that when something happens, you have a backup or rollback that you can do, and on that specific small feature release that you release. So again, this is all out. The tooling is there, but this is also about the culture and the mindset that are moving from monolith and then going to kind of small, frequent releases of your application, targeting value stream instead of the whole kind of production. Yeah. And what we've heard from our own kind of development environment and our own businesses and the customers is the impact of, and also from DORA report is the impact of this CI/CD development kind of methodology in terms of reducing the deployment frequency from monthly to hourly, weekly, monthly, hourly. And you can see the lead time here, 1 to 6 months and then 1 to 7 days. You know, and then the failure rate is really about the quick feedback, the loop back you have in every stage of the development process. So, I mean, so you can see that the failure rate, because it's very expensive to detect bugs in the later stage of your development life cycle than earlier. So this, what we are going to look at is each phase has really kind of the testing and the feedback loop that you catch the debug or error earlier than at a later stage. So then the next thing I said I was going to say, just to look at the what is the conceptual kind of release process like, and then we kind of map it to the later on map it to the AWS capability and services within this kind of conceptual stages of the release. So in essence, this modern development release has like 4 stages: the source, the build, the test, and the production. So in the source, this is where really the developers are in terms of day-to-day activities. You build your code, whether any platform or any IDE or any language, and then you have your code reviewed by your peers. I mean, it's very important to review the code, whether for style, whether for code style or any kind of small errors or best practices that within the organization that you have. Maybe review because before the code is merged to the application code base. Once that is done, I mean, you have the other stage, which is a separate stage on its own. It's about how to compile the code, build the packages, check the state checkers, and then also kind of make the code, create the artifact ready for deployment. Now, this is a stage on its own, has several processes in about unit testing, about kind of compiling, building, and the dependency and putting up together the packages and then making it ready for deployment. And then the next stage, the conceptual, the next stage is the integrating stage, your piece of software, whether it meets the requirement of the whole application or what other teams are building, and the performance. That's where you do the integration testing with other system, load testing, performance testing. You do all the scripts. So now you are testing the change or the committed source code that you put, the build that has been generated from it, the unit test has been done. Now you are testing it together with your system, with other teams' kind of software to see whether it meets the requirement of the application or the best practice or whatever constraints you have with the application. Now, once this is done, then you have a production ready or deployable kind of package for production, right? And this the production environment is the once you deploy to the production environment, then this is where the monitoring and the kind of observability also kick in. That is your application performing as it should in production. I mean, do you have, what are the drifts that is happening? What are the measurement performance? And that feedback, it's really about feedback also. And that feedback is taken in back to the any stage of the application that needs to be handled. So let me talk. So in terms of automation. So if I go back a little bit here, you see that these are independent components, kind of stages of the release cycle. And we talk about the kind of Microsoft, when we talk earlier about the kind of automation, this needs to be put together and this needs to be somehow automated because they work independently in their stage. So this brings the kind of terminology that I want to clear here so that we are all on the same page in terms of what are the terminologies that we've been using or we use and what do they mean? So when we talk about continuous integration, this is really about checking code and then the code I mean, once you commit or change code base, it triggers kind of automatically the build and test. I mean, you build a code, a test, the unit testing, this happens automatically. And this is the main reason this is about ensure code quality. So there will be, you check unit testing and then you get immediate feedback on how or what it is that needs to be fixed, or whether your code passed the unit test or whatever text you want to spell checks, linking tests. There are so many tests that you can kind of perform there to make sure that the code meet the software quality test that your department or your organization has. So this ensures really code quality, because this is immediate. And this is what immediate to the developer, immediate feedback for the developer to develop to correct the issue before you even go to this second stage. So each time there's a code change, it triggers this build and test kind of automation. So this is what we call continuous integration. Now, once this is done, the continuous integration is done. Actually involves also the testing part. Once this is done, the continuous delivery is about kind of automating any code change or code commit. Once any change happens, you automate the flow with the testing till a staging environment. So building on the continuous integration, now the continuous delivery goes further in terms of doing all the performance tests, verification tests against the production, and then also kind of any kind of organizational or requirement test that needs to be done. The continuous delivery would kind of automate that flow. So apart from the testing, you have the integration testing, you have the performance testing, you have any kind of testing that you want to do, like load testing and other testing that kind of check the validity of the code and mix it. So you have deployable, ready code at the continuous integration, but you are short of deployment. So you deploy up to the production stage, but then you build in kind of a decision mechanism in terms of authorization and audit before the code is kind of approved for production. So it means here the code is ready for production, but needs most often human intervention to approve the code before the code goes finally to production. And then the other one is the continuous deployment, because the continuous deployment, say, building from the continuous delivery. Now, I mean, you've done a lot of testing, and this requires confidence and kind of repeated kind of practices, consistencies to get to this stage, in the sense that you don't need any human intervention. Once the code changes happen, I mean, the process is automated all the way to the production. So the verification test is done, the performance test is done, and right into the production. And then you deploy into production. So no intervention. That's the difference between these two. No intervention. You just, anytime there's a code change, runs through all build test stages, integration tests, validation, and then to the production deployed. So this is the difference, because I think there is always because these are the abbreviation of all this is CD, continuous delivery, CD, continuous deployment, but there is a little bit of difference here. And then continuous operation is once I mean, is deployed. I mean, the observability part, you need to monitor your application, the health of your application, the performance of the application. I mean, the performance also include with the application performing as it should be. What are the metrics you set up for the application? Are you meeting those metrics? And is the traffic application handling those traffic? And all these things, I mean, you are collecting feedback and then kind of passing it on to developers, that if there is anything to be done to update the applications, done continuously. So you have this so you have this cycle going on continuously. But one thing I say, just this continuous delivery and continuous deployment is a bit it's not confusing, but people kind of entertain them. But they're a bit different, you know. Like I said earlier on, the continuous delivery requires intervention. You have a decision point. But the code is kind of production-ready code because in terms of technical validity, the code has been validated. But mostly it's a business reasons or some other regulatory reason that you have human intervention or decision point and audit point to just press or approve it to allow some tool to execute and the code to produce. So you have the code checking is validated, but for the code to be the code base to be available for customer use, you need somebody to, or you need a decision point, somebody to kind of authorize that. And with the continuous deployment, still code ready, but then you don't need anybody or any decision point because this has already been validated, tested, and kind of in a consistent manner that, I mean, when the code passes there, it goes through to the production to actually customer use of your code. So the difference here, yeah. So operational excellency for CI/CD. So this is what we talked earlier about. You monitor your deployment process, and then one of this thing is that once your application has been deployed, you need to continue monitoring and kind of integrate it with your incident management system. That you need to have a kind of a solid operation model, whether Rambo, Playbook, or whatever you have. You have a solid operational model that in our company with your application, that what are the actions to take? What are the set of procedures to follow? And you have to have this, so this we call operational excellence. There are a set of actions and set of practices and process already established for how you operate your environment. And then you can use tools. I mean, we have this CloudWatch and S3 that we talk about, the tools that you want for your monitoring. And then and the tools can do, some of the tools have the dashboard. You need a dashboard to see what is going on. So now we are really proactive in terms of enhancing your application, in terms of your application, the help, in terms of what are the requirements the application needs to do. So I will skip this slide because I have no, but just to show you that, I mean, the software in AWS kind of, we have different parts of AWS that are kind of practicing this continuous CI/CD. We've seen the results. And we also know that those who are practicing it strongly have kind of see better, less defect, better outcome, and faster to faster to innovate, to meet customer kind of, like we talk about value stream, to meet customer needs. And similarly, we've had so many kind of feedback from our customers that, hey, this is really kind of is becoming the core of our business, because once you, from ideation to code to production, it's kind of really shortened, and that you are kind of putting innovation in the hands of your customers, and you are being kind of competitive, and then that means your business really relies on that. So your business relies on your ability for your software developers to kind of automate, move fast, bring idea to production. So the success of your software developers also kind of becomes a success for your business. So that being said, this is so don't read the slides now. Just follow my lead. I mean, this is kind of introduction to AWS developer tooling ecosystem, right? So I just put these slides to show you how expansive the AWS developer ecosystem tools are. This might be overwhelming or might be too expansive, but it's for a reason. It's by design. Because what we realize is that software developers don't like to be locked in any kind of developer ecosystem technologies, and there are a lot of them. So what the AWS developer ecosystem is designed is to meet exactly that need. Whatever type of developer you are, we support your IDE or whatever language that you are comfortable working with. Well, we have the our IDE, our SDK supports that language, whether it's Python, whether it's Java, Go, and whatever environment that you are comfortable with. Tools, shells, and then, or if you are using, you are familiar with Visual Studio or IntelliJ, we have a plugin for that. So this is kind of by design, and we don't want, there is no vendor locking, there is no locking with the AWS environment. We meet the developers and the customers where they are comfortable, and we provided the means, the tools, enable them to build faster and innovate faster. But today I'm going to talk only about the left-hand corner, the CI/CD tools. But this is just to give you like an overview of what is there, what is available, and what you'll be working with once we are in the AWS ecosystem. So like this is the same as the release kind of the concept that I thought about this source, build, test, and deploy. I mean, this is built in a sense that we have shown you how to map these things with the AWS services and capabilities that we offer to meet your software development lifecycle. So if you look at this, I mean, you are covered from end to end, from your source to the application and deployment and monitoring. And for example, if you look at the left side, the other, we have the cloud-based IDE, I mean, which easily set up, I mean, very integrated with AWS credentials and KMS. That we'll talk about it later. And then it has code editor, debugger, and then a terminal that you can use easily. I mean, you don't need to, it's a browser based. And then when you come to code commit is really a private Git repo with AWS, which is kind of fully managed. You don't need to care about any service, and also kind of it's also kind of integrate with other AWS services like CloudWatch Event. That will give you the ability to be able to have a lot of automation in terms of when something happens, an event is generated, you can use for a Lambda or this to have your custom kind of actions on with that. And then the code build, this is actually where you compile, build your code, do the unit test, and we have AWS code build. Also fully managed, so serverless, and also can integrate with a lot of third-party kind of popular third-party kind of solutions and services. Again, giving you the flexibility to mix and match. You know, and then we have code build like plus third-party that you can do the testing with, and you can also add any popular top vendor kind of automated testing that you have environment. You can plug in with the code build. That is what it's built for, to give you the maximum distance. Code deploy is about kind of defining your deployment, and it handles the deployment, also handles the blue-green deployment, handles the rollback. So this is the service that kind of handle your deployments on any kind of the compute environment that you want to deploy. And then we have the monitoring, which is S-Ray, which I will talk about S-Ray and CloudWatch later. But yeah, so the S-Ray kind of give you traceability throughout your application, which is really cool. That, I mean, visually the S-Ray service map, that you can see how your request transverses through the different service components of your applications, and what are the results and what are the implications there. You can easily see all the map visually with a detailed insight of what is happening in each node as your request traverses the service nodes of your application. And then last but not least, I want to mention the Amazon Code Guru. So like we have all this process and automated, but I mean, they will be meaningless if they are incorrect. So Code Guru kind of like even without a Code Guru, you always, when you commit your code base, it always needs to be reviewed, because it's very important that it means what the style check, or whether it means the requirement that apart from any kind of errors that you may have in your code. Even if you don't have error, we have the style check to check, we have the linkage check, all these things will be done has to be done before your code is actually merged to the application code base, manually or otherwise. Code Guru kind of provides you the ability using machine learning to do that for you. And then the other part of the Code Guru is the code profiler, which checks your application while in production, the performance of the application, and try to kind of give you recommendation on what to do afterwards. And then in the infrastructure side, also we have a way that kind of, instead of building your infrastructure, going to the AWS console, try to build infrastructure. We have infrastructure as a code that you can build it once and use it many times, review it, edit it like a code for you. And that way you can allow it to experiment, to move faster, and to deploy infrastructure across many regions and many accounts without one single kind of code that you develop to define your resources and describe your resources and their dependencies. And then a little bit of abstraction for the pure software developers is the cloud development kit that abstract the kind of, let's say, the cloud formation on a higher level. And then we have the SAM, which is also an abstraction, kind of shorthand syntax to express the APIs and the function for serverless application. We will go into that. So these are the kind of services that map into the different kind of stages of the release cycle or modern software delivery, and with other kind of services like Code Guru and monitoring services and the infrastructure as a code for you. So now I'll just kind of pick some of the the components of that, talk about them a little bit, and then just to give you an idea what they are and what they do. And then when you are doing it, you'll be using them, and then it'll be easy to navigate. So Cloud9 is simply a browser-based IDE, you know, that simplest way, and it's kind of properly set up for you. I mean, you can write a code editor, you can debug, and then you have terminal to run most of your CLI kind of commands and things. You can use it to build serverless application or any application. And then you have the direct terminal. So, I mean, and it's really integrated with AWS IAM and then credentials. So you have a lot of things already set up for you with the Cloud9, and it's just a browser base, as simple as that. So this is really powerful in terms of you can try out anything, and you have kind of the environment with all the AWS kind of libraries kind of set up for you. And then still talking about the development environment. So now we are talking about the first part of the source code, this thing. So now, and then I'm going to move a little bit faster. So like I said before, any IDE that you are comfortable with, we are plugging for that you can use. And then whether Visual Studio, IntelliJ, or I mean, whatever you are comfortable with, you will be able to use it or a popular desktop with the AWS SDK. Now, I mentioned about Code Guru. So Code Guru is basically using machine learning to kind of review your code, give you intelligent recommendation. Even a junior developer can follow that recommendation. And then both in terms of optimizing your code, removing expensive flags, and then also identify application efficiency while your application is running your production environment. So code commit is really, it's a Git repo, a private Git repo, and it's integrated with IAM, the event bridge, and SNS. So like this gives you, with the event bridge, gives you capability to automate, capability to define custom action once code is committed, whether merge or pull request, what kind of automation you want to do. It's serverless or it's fully managed, and then it's handled, the repo is actually S3 that is backed by the repo. So basically look at it as a private Git repo. And then, I mean, you can keep all you don't have to change any of your application, Git client or Git this, you don't have to change anything. You just use it as it is. And then the code build, this is where it's also fully managed service. That's where you compile your source code, run your tests, and then produce packages, and then this is also fully managed, it scales kind of continuously and process multiple builds. And then you pay as you go. But the one thing about this code build is that it's highly kind of, you can highly integrate it with a lot of third-party kind of services, that whether testing services, whether so you can integrate it to a lot of services. There is no vendor lock-in here. You can just into whatever kind of popular service that you have, you want to integrate with code. It works with GitHub, you work with Bitbucket. So you can, your repo could be from anywhere that you could use code build. And then the code deploy, this is actually where you define your deployment. You can deploy on any instance or Lambda, and actually ECS as well, is a Fargate. And then it has the capability of kind of rolling back if there is any failure or detected any failure, and also handles kind of blue-green deployment, kind of rules a little bit of the change or the new release until I kind of gradually or test the new release in production before we move completely from the old release to the new release. You can also deploy it on-prem. You can handle deployment on-prem as well, right? Yeah. So now, like we talked about, all these service, all these components are independent component on their own. You need a service that kind of pull these services together, and kind of, and this is what code pipeline does. Code pipeline does kind of pull all these services together, a kind of a workflow for your releases. Start these services, initiate these actions. So pull all these kind of what sort of actions, and then based on your release model, what sort of action that needs to be done, and which actions goes first, and which action goes next, and how to execute them, and with which services to execute them. This code deployed code pipeline also kind of does the service that does that. And it's also integrated with third-party tools and AWS. So here again, it's kind of open and flexible for any other third-party tool that you are used to, Jenkins or whatever you are used to, it integrates with it, and you can use it with a code pipeline. Right. So I talked a little bit about the observability. So throughout your stages, every stage has a feedback loop, right? So this is where you want to catch any errors or any performance issues, to provide a quick feedback, to provide a quick iteration to ensure code quality or software quality as you move along, right? But once you deploy application, also you have CloudWatch that you need to monitor the application, you respond to performance changes, and also sometimes you need to monitor the application because things change, resources, traffic change, you need to optimize the resources. And this is what CloudWatch gives you. CloudWatch, it has a dashboard, you can check the health of your operation, you can check your resource utilization, you can check how you're, based on the metrics, collect metrics and logs and events. Based on those, you can check what against your metrics and what needs to be updated and what needs to be kind of enhanced by providing the feedback to your developers. And S-Rail is actually used to debug production, used to trace the traceability to kind of identify performance bottleneck and troubleshoot. It traces your requests throughout for the whole kind of service point or service nodes in your application. It gives you detailed information of what is happening in each service node, and you can see where the bottleneck is, and then you can kind of troubleshoot that, or even enhance it. And it's for simple and complex application, right? So I mentioned earlier on that we like these are the popular CI/CD ecosystem, and our kind of developer ecosystem integrate with most of these systems, right? So so just to pull everything together, so what we were discussing about AWS service capability in each service, in each stage of the release model or software development lifecycle, what is happening, just a flow that here to just give you a visual kind of representation of what we were discussing and how those things put together. It's like, if you look at visually from the left-hand side, you say either a code change or commit. Once code change or commit that into the private Git repo, which is a code commit. Once code is committed, that it triggers like, an event through a CloudWatch event bridge. And that event triggers the code pipeline. And the code pipeline actually, like I said earlier on, is the service that defines the workflow, and that kind of takes the action to kind of trigger those workflows. So the code pipeline kind of downloads this code and trigger an action which is build and test with AWS code build, right? So the code build, what you do is compile, build, test, unit test, all the things that's been defined there, whether with combination with it, and then kind of store the artifact in S3. But once this is passed successfully, code pipeline triggers the next action, which is deploy in development environment with code deploy. So the code deploy takes over and then kind of does the deployment according to the spec defined, the YAML spec defined in the code deploy instructions, deploy it, and then once that is passed, and then it goes to the code pipeline triggers deploy in prod, which is deploy in production, right? So this is also kind of does the same thing using the code deploy in production, fetches the artifact from S3 and deploy whether EC2, whether with EC2 or Lambda or ECS as /Fargate. So it does the deployment, and the code deploy also kind of has a deployment strategy, also kind of what we have defined in there, whether it's blue, green, or rolling deployment. Code deploy kind of will handle that also for you. So now these are purposely built services that does a lot of heavy lifting for you. You just have to have your manifest file, define your spec, and then it will carry on for you. And then just quickly, I think so this is, I spend a lot of time here because I think this is what we'll be going through in the lab. We'll be deploying things, we'll be using CI/CD tools, so it's very important that you know each stage what is happening, what are the services available, and what is actually kind of triggering that process to happen. But just to kind of add on to this, in there, we'll talk about the infrastructure as a code. Just add on to this is about why do we do that? I mean, you have been spinning up EC2 already in these kind of labs. You go to the console, you have to select the AMI, you have to select the block storage, you have to select whether you want to use EC2 key pairs, and you have a whole lot of stages that you need to go through to set up. And anytime you want to do set another, well, even if you take a snapshot, to take an AMI again, that AMI, you still have to go through process even to use that AMI to spin another EC2. So what this infrastructure as a code is that you define this YAML template, you define your resources. I mean, this is just describing the EC2 resources, but I mean, in a whole template, you define the resources you want to use and the dependency. Once you do them, I mean, you define this further, you create a stack, and that stack, you can deploy it anywhere, every time, many times, delete them, update them so many times, and you have it already. So this gives you the flexibility, and this gives you also ability to be able to check whether your resource is drifting from your original configuration, and then you can automate that part of this. So this is what infrastructure as a code gives you. A lot of flexibility, speed, and then ability to experiment a lot, right? So I'm not going to go into this, but what I will do is that I'll just talk a little bit about what is next, because we talked about how you deploy the code. We talked about the different stages of deploying the code, and then the mindset, really my cultural mindset or mindset of deploying, small but fast, continuously, instead of kind of, waiting to deploy a whole big thing. And then we talked about also a little bit about what infrastructure as a code is in its basic form. So what I want to do next is that, taking it a little bit further about extending those CloudFormation, because then the CloudFormation that we talked about becomes like a lower level service for you in terms of when you are describing, because if you look at, you describe the whole kind of resources, and then but you can do a little bit further, especially when you are building a serverless application model, when you are building serverless distance. There is some which defines a shorthand syntax to express your functions, APIs, database, and event source mapping. This eventually kind of synthesize that definition to a cloud formation template for you, but you don't have to do that. You just use the abstraction, define the Lambda, define what a database is on a very shorthand level, and then the sum takes care of that, and defines a whole cloud template, permission template beneath it for you to deploy. And this when you are developing a serverless application. But what is new also is that, I mean, this is new. I just put this one here just to give you information that there's even further simplification of, I mean, either you are new to AWS serverless application area, or you are new to AWS and you want to build application faster and you want to visualize. And this is kind of, because you first need to find the services, understand which services to put together, and then understand what are the default proven configuration for these services, and before you can even get to run those services. But with Application Composer, you can kind of, it's a drag and drop visual kind of service for you that you can easily see them, pick them, and put them together. And it comes with a properly defined default for you, so that you don't have to kind of so this is a kind of a picture for it. So you just drag and drop, put them together, and then you have your serverless application service. And this is, and then underneath it, it creates the infrastructure as a code for you, which you can share with other colleagues, or which you can kind of use to deploy. But this is kind of deploy ready, kind of this and that for somebody who is new, or for somebody who wants to have an architecture, look at visually what is happening. And then, I mean, this is something that can kind of accelerate your journey in building. So yet, this is another easy way, or a simpler way of building a serverless application. But this is kind of not completely GA yet. So let's see whether this is will come back soon, will come into production soon. And then I'll briefly talk about the CDK. So like most of CDK is actually kind of another level of abstraction for software developers. So that, I mean, we talk about the infrastructure as a code, you define your YAML template, describe your resources. What if you want to do it with your own kind of familiar programming language? And what if you don't know, or you are not an expert in the infrastructure side? So this CDK allows you to do that. You describe your resources the same way you are building your applications. And it abstracts the resources, like, I mean, it has a proven best practice default for you. When you say VPC, there's a VPC construct, which has all the kind of DCP VPC kind of default kind of already defined for you. So you can use that construct to build your VPC, and then you can use, you can still define some parameters that you want to modify, but this gives abstract that thing for you, and you can write your application easily. The same application, the same language that you use to write an application, you can describe your resources for you. You can describe your resources with the same application language that you use to build your application. And you can also build your own library, and kind of modify and build your own. So this is kind of how VPC should look like in my department. You can define it and build a library for it so that other people can use it. Just pick it up and use it. So I will not go into details, but this is the kind of example of this. So you see that you are defining VPC, new EC2.VPC, then, I mean, so the construct has already default this, so you just pick that construct. If you want to, like, you want to define availability to availability, then you can do that. I will not go too much into this, so I will run it, just talk about CDK, the SDK. So similarly with the SDK, is we have a lot of libraries, AWS libraries, that kind of saves you from kind of defining those things. I mean, so you can, with best practice by default, you can get those libraries, just concentrate on your logic, how to put them together, how to leverage the libraries in your application logic to kind of write your application. So just don't have to build or do a lot of low-level API code to build a service. And then there is a new release that quickly I'm running. This is a preview. This is also a simple way of, we talk about a code review. We talk about how to, you talk about a different kind of IDE that you can build your applications. So this is also a service that is being introduced lately to help you write your code faster, to help you with the suggestion recommendation of what kind of it can give you pseudo code or even a whole snippet on what you want to write. I mean, usually when you are developing a code, you go to many places to check how kind of to write a code on specific kind of function, or how those like, for example, you can check Stack Overflow, check this, how is this written, what is this? I mean, you're looking for suggestion on how to kind of write a piece of code or snippet. This code whisper helps you with that. I mean, helps you with that by writing a comment in the IDE directly. It can generate a pseudocode for you, or a whole block of code for you, giving you a recommendation on how this code should be run. If you look at the distance, like if you want to upload S3 image, you can see that it's giving you recommendation here on what it is now, the pseudocode now that you need to use to write this. You can take the recommendation, or you can continue to use your own kind of code that you use. So this again helps you together. And then another kind of service that I wanted to kind of just mention here quickly before we go is like pulling all these things together. AWS has a new service we call Amazon Code Catalyst. So basically, it's a package service. What this service does is that, you know, when you are a project, a software development project, you have the planning, you have the issue tracker, you have the CI/CD pipeline, which is code, you have the infrastructure side, you have the deploy side, and you have the collaboration, who is doing what. All these are in different places, in different tools. I mean, so what Code Catalyst does is that it gives you a single kind of platform to have all these things in one place. And that doesn't mean that you should leave your Jira or Atlassian or whatever. No, you can pull them all together. But when you start a software project, it builds up, you have a software project template that builds up all these things for you. You can collaborate, and you can, I mean, so it's a kind of a service, package service that pull everything together. And the nice thing is also it has a blueprint, like different service template that it can spin up, like a web application kind of infrastructure template for you, or container templates for you, and event-driven based on proving best practices for you to start writing your code and developing your services on top of it. So this is something that probably you want to check. So I mean, down the line, just for your information. I will not go into details, but this is what it gives you automatic project setup, daily workflows, creates the environment automatically for you. Like if you select a blueprint that you want to build web application, it creates that environment for you. Or you want to build event-driven application, you can also build your own blueprint. That's also possible. And then you can collaborate. You don't have to go anywhere. It's the same. You can with that issue tracker, project plan, or whatever. Is the same kind of service that you can use to collaborate. Yes. So I'm running a little bit fast because the idea here is to give you an idea about what is available, how you can navigate within AWS, when you are kind of when you are developing on AWS, what are the tools available? So one of the listings is that, I mean, more information like building modern application on AWS. You can find resources created by our experts to help you build and validate your developer skills. So these are like, I mean, there are several listings, and then you can go to this link that is here. You get a slice, you go to this link, you can learn how to modernize your application with free training. And also you can, if you want to go on a certification path, there is also a path for you. So these are a way to help you, in your journey on developer on AWS. Another thing I want to leave you with is, the Amazon Builders Library. This is guidance from leading engineers on how to build modern applications, modern cloud application in AWS. So you have different sections, different material, different levels that you can, it's still kind of, this is hands-on thing. You can go into, start looking at them, whether it's the architecture, software delivery, operations, different areas that you can start there and on which level and build and see how the expert are kind of prescriptive guidance from the expert, and you can have the hands-on kind of practice with on your own pace. So these are some of the examples here. So you see the builder libraries content, you have the, so you have the architecture, the delivery and operation side, and then you have also kind of different levels, level 300, level 400, how much further or how is, wherever you are, there is a place for you to start and then to learn from AWS expert how to build modern cloud application. Yeah, so all the things that I've presented here, there are resources here that you can go and look further. But then now you kind of know how to navigate through these things. You know what the stages are. You know what we mean when we say the code. You know what we mean when we say continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and you understand all these concepts and what the AWS services are used to offer these capabilities. So I would like to stop here. Basically, what I'm trying to do is just to give you a kind of a better view of what the services are available, what the process you want to go through it, and what the capabilities you can use to, as a developer on AWS, to develop your application and monitor the applications. And then, ensure code quality as you go through different stages of your development process.